Welcome back, guys. It's craft time. In today's video, we are focused on Halloween DIYs. Let's go ahead and get started. Our first project is going to be taking this black milk jug that I had thrifted and turning it into a mummy vase. To do this, we're just going to start out with some white paint. I'm using some white chalk paint, that way it will stick nice and well to this vase. And I'm going to be using a chip brush to leave nice, good texture all over. I'm just going to dip this lightly into my paint. If you get too much, just dab it off a little bit and then lightly dry brush all of this paint on there to where it leaves all these beautiful, nice, streaky paint streaks on there. Sorry, words are hard. So I'm just going to do this all over the vase, going in one direction at first to make sure I get good coverage. And the idea of this is to make it kind of look like it would be the bandages of the mummy. So again, I'm going to do this all over, front, back, from bottom to top, top to bottom, and then I'm going to paint some eyes onto the jug. Now, I'm just going to use this, again, using the same white paint. I'm going to paint 2 ovals to give me, just the white parts of the eyes, and also so I can get my shape and size and make sure I like how everything is kind of lining up. And then you can use whatever color you would like for the irises. I'm going with this kind of like orangish gold color that I have on hand. I just like the way it fits into the Halloween vibe. And so I'm just going to paint that on, and I'm basically painting 2 smaller ovals. And I'm going to kind of have him looking off to the side. So I'm just going to paint that onto the right side of those ovals. Outline everything in black once it's dry just to make them pop off a little bit more, and then paint on 2 of his black pupils. And then from there, I'm going to be adding more bandages on top. So I'm just going to go back to that same chip brush and that same white chalk paint, and I'm going to start kind of going in diagonals all over. So if I go diagonal one way, then I'm going to come back down and go diagonal the other way, almost as if I'm making big X's all over. I just don't want all of the paint to be in one direction because I want him to look kind of all over the place and like a mummy. So I'm just going to keep doing this all over the jug, especially around his eyes, to make them look like they're not just floating on top. So I don't really want to cover them completely, but I did go over them just slightly so that it gives a look that they are underneath some of the bandages too. And then that part is complete. We're just going to let it dry, and after it dries, we're going to seal it. You can use a clear spray paint or whatever sealer you want. I'm going to use my clear polyacrylic because that's what I have on hand. So I'm just going to give it a nice even light coat all over and then let it dry before we move on to adding a cute ribbon around the top. I'm going to just go with this purple and black ribbon that I have on hand. It's super cute and I think pulls together all of the florals that I'm going to put in the top. The florals are from Dollar Tree, and I think this turned out super cute. Next, we're going to be working on a ghost door hanger. So I picked up this wood round from either Michael's, possibly Hobby Lobby, maybe even Walmart. I believe it's a 6 to 10 inch wood round. It was like $3.50, and I'm going to be using this for the head of my ghost. I'm going to start by just painting it with some white acrylic paint, and I'm going to be using what would be technically be the bottom of this wood round as the face. So I'm just going to paint it up with a nice even coat and let that dry. Once that has dried completely, we're going to lightly sand the edges as you added the paint, as I added the paint and it got that wood wet. Since it's nice raw wood, it did splinter up a little bit around the edges. So I'm just going to be using a sanding block and kind of knocking that down. This just ensures there are no accidental splinters and that the fabric we're putting on top can go on nice and smoothly. From there, I'm going to be taking this wire that I have. You can use a floral wire. This is just something I had in my stash. It's nice and long, and we're going to be using it to kind of create some shape and arms to this ghost. So where there's a beveled edge on that back part, I am going to be laying it in, inlaying this wire in and using my staple gun to secure it nice and well. So I'm just going to go around in like a half moon shape. So I'm going to do half of the circle, and I'm going to go around and put staples in all the way throughout that. And then I'm going to go back in with my little crafting hammer, and I'm going to hammer those staples in to make sure they're not going to go anywhere. By hammering these in, It's just making sure that wire can't move side to side or shift in any way. It'll be nice and secure so that we don't have to worry about it coming apart in the future. From there, we're going to just cut off any of the length that we don't want, and then kind of curling over the end so that the point is out of our way so that we can start working on the fabric. I am using a tea towel here. You can use a cheesecloth, you can use drop cloth, you can use an old t-shirt, whatever you have on hand. I'm using this tea towel and I'm cutting away all of those edges, and I am just making a slight cut and then ripping it because I want it to look a little more messy on the edges. Then I'm just going to remove that and then lay this over the wood round. This is where we're going to start to see kind of the shape of our ghost coming together. So I'm going to use the kind of just like the top of the towel and fold it down over. And I'm going to leave the most of the length of the towel in the front of the ghost. So here you see me kind of doing like a dry run. I'm just kind of fitting it around, seeing how I look, making sure it's nice and flat on the front. And then I'm going to go back and kind of make sure I've pulled it taut. Now that I kind of have an idea how the fabric will lay, and I'm going to start stapling my fabric to the wood round. And I'm doing this because I want to make sure that this is going to last and not shift or have glue come apart or melt or anything. So I'm just, again, folding it around those corners, trying to get out any of the wrinkles I can. It's important to me that the face is nice and flat. So I'm just going to, again, just keep carefully pulling it tight, but not too tight to where I'm ripping fabric or anything, and then just pinning it down with these staples. And then once you get that how you like it, just flip it back over to make sure everything is laying the way that you want it to. You don't need to remove any staples and kind of like redo anything. And once you do have it to where you like it, we are going to Mod Podge the fabric to the surface of the wood. I am using dishwasher safe Mod Podge, that way after it cures it will be waterproof. I don't want this to have any issues if somebody does purchase this to put on their front door. So I'm just going to do a nice thick, but I don't know, like a medium layer of this Mod Podge down, because this fabric is thicker than what we would do for paper. So I did a nice healthy coat of the Mod Podge evenly throughout, rubbed it down, and now I'm going to do again a nice healthy coat of this all over the face of this fabric. And I'm just going to make sure that I get it absolutely everywhere because I want to make sure it's nice and secure. And then I set this to the side and I let it dry completely. It did take quite a bit, but I wanted to make sure that it was completely ready before we moved on to the next step. For the next step, I am painting on the face. Now I do wish I started with a template, so you can draw your face out on a piece of paper to kind of get an idea of what you want it to look like. You can cut out a template and lay it down to trace it. I kind of went in here without a plan and made me worry for just a little bit because I wasn't sure I was loving it. So I just started out small and got bigger as I noticed that, you know, kind of like the proportions were off. And I just painted it on with some black acrylic paint. Once I got the eye shape where I wanted it to be, and I was happy with that, then I wanted to add a mouth. Again, this can be whatever shape you want. If you do a template, it would be easier to switch out different options to make sure you're happy with it. But I just went with like a little side smirk, and I am very happy with how their face turned out. She's super cute, and I just kind of painted in like the little cheek portions and stuff. If you were like, my ghost is going to be a girl, I could have added a little blush cheek if I wanted to, but I wanted to leave her pretty simple. From here, we're going to start working on the bottom of that tea towel. I am just cutting little slits again and then ripping them up, and I'm ripping them about 3/4 of the way up from the bottom of the towel to the wood. I don't want them too close to the wood because I don't want them to naturally accidentally rip further and then start showing that too much. So I'm just going to go through, and I started with kind of thicker strips at first, and then I do go back and kind of thin them out a little. But I wanted to start so that I could get the arms lined up and make sure everything looks good before I ripped too much fabric. So here you just see that I bent those wires over to make them a little bit like heftier, and then I wrapped them around themselves and I tucked those points inward. That way there's nothing that could be possibly stabbing through that fabric. From there, I'm using some hot glue and I'm securing the fabric around that wire. That way it's not just free flowing in there. So if the wind blows, the fabric moves and then that wire is exposed. So I just encased both of them with fabric and then decided I'm going to come back now and make these thinner strips. So again, just cutting a little slit and ripping and pulling it. Once that was done and I held it up, I realized that I wanted a little bit more fabric. It wasn't as substantial as I wanted it to be. So I just grabbed another portion of a tea towel that I had and I stapled that to the back as well and then just started cutting it the same way. And I'm just really happy with this because it just added a little bit more fabric and made it look a little better. When I was holding it up, the proportion of head to fabric just seemed off to me. So again, you can add as much as you want. You can add lace strips in here. You can add different types of fabric, different colors of fabric, and really make it whatever you want it to be. We're going to move on to the pumpkin that I'm having my little ghost hold. I wanted it to be holding the beware sign that I had picked up from Dollar Tree, but I didn't have anything to mount that onto. So I'm going to take these little wood round coasters is what they were meant to be, and I'm going to cut these down to create a pumpkin. Now I'm just using an X-Acto knife and a cutting mat here. I just kind of line them up how I thought I wanted them to look, and then I need to cut off that like a fourth of that edge of two of the rounds to make sure that they can sit behind that third one. And then I'm just going to kind of play to see how I want it to lay. So I think that's looking like a really good shape and I'm really happy with it. So now we're going to move on and go ahead and paint them. I am using the orange chalk paint that I have. I am just painting up each one of these panels and I'm just doing a base coat. We'll do a little bit more shading here in a little bit. I'm also doing a base coat on the beware sign. It's just that like galvanized metal and that's not really the look I was going for. So I'm using some black chalk paint as a base. I'm going to make it metallic here in a little bit, but I needed the black chalk paint because it would stick well to that material. Once it dried, then I went back in with this like black gold metallic color that I have. That way it has a nice good shimmer to it. And I just painted right back on top of that. Again, the chalk paint will stick to many surfaces. So that's why I used it as my base and then went back in with that second coat of the shimmery paint. Once my pumpkin was dry, I could lay it back out so that I could start cutting down a stem. I'm just using a popsicle stick here. I'm going to cut down, at first I just did 3, but I ended up doing 5 sticks worth to kind of layer them together to make them look kind of rough and rustic, like a nice stem. And I'm just going to end up putting that behind those panels. So I took some of the antiquing wax. I painted that on. Again, you see me doing 3 here. I ended up doing 2 more off camera to really make it a little bit more substantial, but I just did the wax on them, wiped off the excess, let it dry, and then I started gluing everything together. Now I'm going to be using my STARBOND glue, which is basically just a super glue, but it does have a spray accelerator. Now that accelerator is magical. So just so I know where to put that glue, I laid it on its back, drew some guidelines, and now all you do is you put the glue on one side of the surface, and then you use that accelerator and you spray it on the second surface. So you just do a light coat, and then when you push it down, it will form an instant bond within 10 to 12 seconds. Sometimes even faster depending on how thick of the layer of glue is that you're using. So I love using this stuff because it's nice and secure and strong, but also gives me that instant hold. So if you're like me and you used to do like a super glue with a hot glue mixture to get like an instant hold versus a long-term hold, this is the best of both worlds, and it is linked in my affiliate links if you're interested. I'm going to start layering these popsicle sticks for my stem, and again I'm just going to put some glue down and I'm going to spray one side with my accelerator and start forming and building this stem. I wanted this to kind of be at different heights, lengths, and widths so that it just kind of had more of a rustic feel to it. And then I'm going to attach this to the pumpkin. Again, glue down, accelerator, push it, and then like I said, sometimes it holds within 5 seconds. Sometimes it takes 10 to 12 depending on how thick your glue is. But I will say it doesn't leave a lot of room for error, so just keep that in mind. Here you see me using some of that antiquing wax to kind of add some shade to this pumpkin. I'm just doing a very, very light coat of it and then wiping it off. And I'm going to go back and do the same with this white paint. So I'm going to kind of put where I want my highlights to be with the white paint. And while it's still wet, go in with that same orange that I painted the base with to blend it out. This is just going to add some dimension to that pumpkin and make sure it doesn't look super flat. After that, I need to seal it up, so I'm using some of that same dishwasher safe Mod Podge to put a seal on this. Chalk paint has to be sealed, so if this were out in the weather, that chalk paint could just like wash off over time, and this will help keep it and make it waterproof because this is the dishwasher safe version. So I'm going to do this on the front and the back of this piece. From there, we're going to add this beware sign. Now, glue is not going to hold on this, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some floral wire to attach it. That means I do need to get a little bit of tools out here, so I'm going to use my little screw gun with the smallest drill bit that I have and go over those marked areas that I had just made with the pencil and make some holes. From there, I'm going to be taking some small floral wire and just feeding it through those holes. So I did 2 holes. Each place I need 1 piece of floral wire. That way I can put it through the back, around the front, over a part of the sign, and then back through the back and twist it together. This will hold it nice and secure so I don't have to worry about it going anywhere or falling off in the future. And so I'm just going to twist those down, cut away any excess, and tuck away any points that might be there. And then you see me here using that same paint from the sign to kind of hide them and make them blend in to where if you really look, they're noticeable, but at the naked eye, you cannot see them. All that it's left is to make a really cute bow for the front of her and add a hanger to the back. So I am cutting down some of this black sparkly ribbon that I have, and then you see me using my drill bit box to wrap around some of that. This is the fabric that I had cut off at the beginning from the tea towel. It's the edges of it. So I'm just going to use that to make a nice messy bow. So I wrapped it around that screw gun package, and now I'm just using one of the strings to tie it in the middle to make sure it's secure and not going to come undone. And then I did end up using some hot glue as well to make sure that that's not going to come untied. And then from there, we're going to attach it to those black ribbons you see back there. So for those, we're just going to pick them up in that X pattern that I have them laying in, and we are going to pinch them in the center. You're going to use either floral wire, a pipe cleaner, or bread tie, string, whatever you have on hand, and you're going to tie that around the middle to cinch it and keep it in place. And then we're just going to fluff out all of those edges. This is a really easy, simple way to make a cute bow. And then I'm going to kind of place it on top here and see if I like it. And then at this point, I decided I didn't like the loops of this messy bow that I had made. So I did go ahead and cut the ends of those to make them look a little more raggedy and a little more, I don't know, ghostly, if you will. After that, it's time to secure it. So I'm going to secure this bow to the wood itself with that staple gun. I'm just going to pull back parts of it and get as close to the center as I can. That way you can't see the staples. They'll be nice and covered. And then I'm going to lay this, towel bow right on top, and I'm going to secure it on with some floral wire. So all I'm going to do here is push it through that middle wrapped portion that I have, and then secure it to the wire that we wrapped around the center of that black bow. That's just going to make sure that it's not going to fall off or go anywhere, and it'll stay in place even outside in the elements. Once that's nice and secure, we do need to add a hanger to the back. So I'm just going to be using some rope for this. So I'm just going to make a little loop, use that staple gun, and put multiple staples in to make sure it's nice and secure and going to hold. And then I'm going to use my hot glue gun to cover those staples. This is just going to create a barrier just in case any of those staples become sharp at any time. They're not going to scrape up someone's door or wall. All that's left now is to add our little pumpkin and have the ghost hold it. So I'm just kind of laying it out here, shaping the arms around it. And when I'm happy with where it's at, I'm going to use some hot glue. I am using hot glue because the hot glue is going to kind of form with that material and stick really well to that wood. So I'm just going to place those on, stick it down really good. And then from there, I'm going to glue the little hands in place. That way they look like they're actually holding it. And to do this off camera, I did pick it up to hold it to let the pumpkin see where the pumpkin hit to where those hands would naturally go. And then that's when I knew where I should secure them. So after I got those on there, we're all done. And I am so excited with how this turned out. Please let me know in the comments below which one of these projects is your favorite, or are all of them your favorite? Because I am obsessed. Next, I'm going to throw at you some really easy ways to transform some maybe older items that you have, or some items that just need a little bit of pop of spooky. I'm making some black wax here, so I'm just using some clear wax and then mixing in some black ink, chalk paint. You can use whatever type of paint that you want. I've used chalk and acrylic and never had any issues, and I do this a lot of just creating whatever color wax I want. So as long as the portion is mostly wax with just not more than, I would say, 50-50 of paint to wax. I wouldn't even do that high. I'm not sure if I would actually. So just make sure you have more wax than paint and it should work just fine. So here you see me painting on that mixture that I just made. Again, clear wax with whatever color paint. I'm using black because I really want to make this little scarecrow that I picked up kind of spooky. And I'm going to paint it on and wipe it off. And I love the way that this looks. I did this on 3 different items for this video, and you'll see that in the picture at the end. But it's such a simple way to add and pop all the detail in these little characters without having to do a ton of work, honestly. So you paint it on, you wipe it off, and then you just have to make sure you let it dry, for the proper amount of time, and that you're not leaving fingerprints anywhere. But I did this with the scarecrow, a little owl, and the little like skeleton spider from the Dollar Tree, and I think it really gave them some good spooky pops of color. Next, I picked up this trick or treat sign, and it just looked like this. It was brown with a little bit of black sparkle at the top. So I cleaned it up, and I'm using my sanding block just to get all of that little bit of black glitter that was already on there off. After I've done that and wiped all of the dust away, I am using some Mod Podge, and we are going to add a ton of glitter. So I'm going to be doing 3 different colors of glitter here. I'm going to do like a gold orange, a black, and a purple. And I'm just going to do this over top of a nice clean piece of paper so that as I go, I can collect my glitter. So you saw me paint here a nice even coat of Mod Podge, not super thick, and I'm just going to tap on the bottom of this glitter all over the place to get it dispersed. And I'm just going to do it a couple letters at a time. That way my glue doesn't dry too fast. And then tap off any of the excess down onto that paper below. That way I can collect it back up and reuse the glitter, because if not, you will run out quick. So I'm just going to fold my paper in half here, open up my bottle, and dump it back in. And if this seems a little bit juvenile for you, you're like, yeah, of course, some people haven't done anything with glitter before, so just skip ahead if you know how this is gonna go. So I'm just gonna pinch the bottom of my paper here to make it more of a funnel, like tap it down and then close that glitter back up so that you do not accidentally knock it over. Here you see I've already done a layer of the glitter, and I'm just going back and spot checking anywhere there might be some bare spots. So I'm just very lightly tapping on some glue. That way I can go back over top with the glitter again and fill in those bare spots. If you want it to look a little more substantial without using as much glitter, you can paint the background of your letters to the color of your glitter, and that will give it a more fulfilled look without having to use as much glitter. So for the purple glitter portion, I would have just painted the back of it purple first, then done the glue, then done the glitter. Here you see me adding a little bit more. I have like this like flaky glitter just to add a little bit more texture and different color and dimension, and I think it turned out super cute, way different than how it looked whenever I picked it up. And then once that all dries, we're going to spray it with some clear spray. So that way we make sure that that glitter is on there and not going to go anywhere. Here we are going to start working on a pumpkin door sign or hanger that I found this metal pumpkin and I am in love. The moment I saw it, I knew I had to have it. I wasn't quite sure what I was going to do with it yet, but I knew some type of hanger was obvious. So I'm just going to clean it up, and then this little like vine coming out of its head going straight up was really not the vibe for me, so I just started kind of moving it around and bending it to where it flowed a little bit better. And then I'm going to be mounting it to that wood round that you see in the background. So I'm just going to kind of place it down to see how I like it against that. And once I'm done with that, we're going to move on and start in on that wood round. So what we're going to be doing here is painting a big old harvest moon to attach this pumpkin to. So I'm going to start out with some black chalk paint, and I'm just going to paint the entire surface. This is just going to give me my night sky to paint up against. So I'm just going to do a nice even coat everywhere and then let it dry thoroughly. And once it's dried, we're going to go in and make a moon. I'm going to start in with some acrylic paint. I have some white acrylic paint, this like golden acrylic, like yellow color, and then also some orange. And I'm just going to add all three of them in that big old pile and just start spinning in a circle. The most important part for this is that you're only using the tip of your brush, especially as you get to the outsides, because you don't want it to be solid. You want it to be solid in the middle, and then as you go out, become more like light beams. And so if you're just using the tip of your brush, it's going to leave it a little less heavy on those edges. So I'm just going to do this until I'm happy with how it looks. When you see those big globs and clumps of paint, leave them alone. You want those there because they're going to dry and give beautiful texture to this piece after the paint has dried completely. Here, I went back to the middle and added a little bit more white to make sure the center of the moon is nice and crisp, and I just kind of mixed it back out again, and then we're gonna let it dry. This piece is from the back of the pumpkin that you see through its mouth and its eyes. It's a little dingy. I mean, it's still shiny, but it has like a lot of imperfections on it. So I just wanted to spruce it up a bit, and I'm going to do that with my buffing wax. So I have that gold antique buffing wax. I'm just going to put some of it on here and rub it on and just keep, I suppose, buffing it until it's nice and even and looking good in the way I want. And it's just going to give this a nice little refresh and update that color just slightly. We're going to set that to the side to dry also. I will say I left that wood round to dry for a full 24 hours to make sure that everything was fully and completely dry. And then that metal piece dried pretty quickly. And you can see I just slipped it back into the cage that it was in prior. Now I realized here that I missed part of a filming somehow. So here I drilled holes to wire the pumpkin to the wood round, just like you saw me do in the ghost project. And then I also painted some bats onto the moon and sprayed it with some Rust-Oleum 2X clear coat. And then we attached a Dollar Tree bat to it just to give it a little more texture and glitter and fun. And then all that's left is to add a hanger. So I'm using some wired jute that I picked up from the Dollar Tree, and I'm just going to wire it through the holes, one of the holes that was already in that wood round, and I'm going to wrap it up nice and well, and then I'm going to end up hot gluing the end where that jute is kind of unwinding. That way it won't unwind further, and it'll also keep those wires hidden, one for aesthetic and two so that they don't accidentally poke anybody. And then I'm going to kind of bend this around and make it look really messy and kind of going off of the vine that's coming out of the pumpkin. I just wanted to kind of match everything to it. And then I secured it to the top of the pumpkin. That's going to give me a good, nice center so that gravity doesn't pull it sideways from the pumpkin being heavier than that wood round. So I'm going to just flip it back over and add a cute bow. Same as last time, we're going to cut down whatever ribbon you want. Cut it to the fanciest or the slightest that you want to, lay it down in an X pattern, pinch it in the middle and cinch it down. And then again, I'm just going to be using some floral wire. You can use whatever you have on hand and just make sure it's nice and secure and then fluff it out afterwards. I like to make sure whatever I'm using to tie it in the middle is a little bit longer so that I can use that to secure it to the item I'm doing as well. So for me here, that would be leaving a little bit of extra wire and securing it to the wire hanger that we made. So I'm just going to, again, fluff it out, add it to that hanger, and secure it with that extra wire that I have. And I am so in love with this piece. If it weren't for me having too much stuff already, I would have kept this for myself. It sold immediately, and I'm super proud of it. So let me know what you think in the comments below. Thank you guys so much for joining me today in this video. I hope it gives you some ideas on how to decorate for your Halloween festivities. I love Halloween. I love spooky season. So I'm going to take you guys in for a closer look and I will see you next time.